know, are you ready to learn? And if you're ready to learn, I want you to give me an okay symbol. Everybody give me an okay symbol. Let me know that you are here and ready to learn. Okay symbol. I'm seeing a lot of confusion right here. I am from Texas. I've been there for the last 37 years, but I do know the difference between an okay symbol and a thumbs up symbol. And I noticed that a lot of you were doing the thumbs up symbol. Why? I said give me an okay symbol, and a lot of you gave me the thumbs up. Why is that? Oh, because it's on the screen and because I was doing it. Does body language affect the message that we deliver to our customers? I would think yes, right? I want you to think about all the situations that you're in, all the times that you're interacting with a customer, when you are on the phone with a customer, when you have a one-on-one conversation. You're maybe at a team meeting talking about it. Maybe you have that opportunity to be at the sales and marketing meeting and you're standing up here in front of 300 folks. How do you align your body language with the right tone and with the right words so that the message of being torque ready and the message of what SCA is all about is what the customer gets? Now, I want to share with you my acting debut from about 8 years ago. In this particular video, I'm walking into my boss's office, and I want to ask you a question after it's over. How do you think I felt after this conversation?
Dale, you got a second? I'm having an issue with a coworker.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm listening.
How did I feel? How would you feel? Have you ever been in a situation like that? I've got a 17-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter, and I kind of run into that every day. How did you feel? Give me a word. How do you feel if you're me in that situation? Unimportant. Is my boss interested? Probably not. If we ever do this with our customers, they're going to get that same sense. And so I want you to be thinking about how we communicate. I want you to be thinking about your words. I want you to be thinking about your tone. I want you to be thinking about your body language. How do you align all that so that you send the message that you want to send to your customer? There's a great quote from Dale Carnegie. He says there's 4 ways that we're evaluated in this world. And those 4 ways are this. It's what we do. It's how we look. It's what we say. And it's how we say it. So what I want to do for the next 60 minutes is I want to talk with you about communication factors. I want to talk with you about structuring the conversations that we have so that we're not just doing what I call the show up and throw up with a bunch of data. We've got some great information. We've got some great stories. We've got some great statistics. But how do we make it come to life? How do we make the message stick so that when your customer's done talking with you, they're going to remember you and they're not going to remember your competition? And then I want to talk about customer questions. You get lots of questions, and I'm going to ask you in just a few minutes, what are some of those common questions you get? And what are some of those tough questions you get? Those ones where you really struggle, and some of us, we get defensive with some of those tough questions. Some of us just give in to the customer because the customer said, I want my dispenser for free, and it's kind of like, yeah, Mike told me I'm not supposed to, but yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. How do we overcome some of those tough objections? We're going to talk about all that. Now, what I want to ask you, and I want to get you involved with me on this question, what are some of the worst things that you've seen people do when they're having conversations or giving presentations? What are those characteristics that you've seen people do where you're sitting in a meeting or you're watching a presentation going, not again? Let me hear some. Things that presenters do, things that you've seen salespeople do that just kind of in the audience you're just going, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to listen to that. What are those characteristics or attributes? I heard reading the PowerPoint. Have you seen that? Now, we get these decks, right? And we've got to go out to our customers. And maybe I've got 3 or 4 folks. Maybe I've got a whole room full of people. And I've got to present the torque message. But then standing and reading every word that we're going to say on our PowerPoint slides, this does eliminate the need for you as sales folks to memorize your presentation, but it ultimately makes your slides crowded, wordy, and boring. Your audience will be reading your slides, and they won't be listening to you, and you'll lose their attention before you reach the bottom of your first slide. Kind of like that. What else? What are other things that you've seen people do that you're just like, no, don't do that, so we know we don't read our slides? What else do we not do? Filler words, like when you've seen the folks, and there might, been a couple of them who, when they're trying to deliver the message, and, they got the message, like that. We don't want that. So we got to get rid of the filler words. We got to stop reading our slides. What else? Let me hear from this side of the room. Generic versus personalized. Let's get to know their business. It's so easy today. You can hop online. You can learn so much about the organizations that you're going to walk into. So we personalize the message for the audience. I find that a lot of times, and you guys do this at SCA, I've seen it in the classrooms that I deliver, you use a lot of TLAs. And when you use a lot of the TLAs in your presentations, they're very familiar to you, but the TLA may not be familiar to your customer. And so we got to avoid that. We need to customize the presentations to our audience. Nobody's going to ask? Okay, a TLA is a 3-letter acronym. And do y'all have a lot of acronyms that you use? Now, customizing your presentation to your customer would know when to spell out the acronym, when to make the message about that customer, because when I did that, when I just used the TLA example, what were all of you doing? You were like, what's a TLA? Some of you were just smiling and nodding, going, yeah, I know. And you had no clue what it was, but yet you were going to just go along with it. Guess what? Your customer's doing that same thing. When you talk language that they don't know what they're talking about, be yourself, communicate appropriately with that customer. Let me hear one more from this side of the room. What's something else we want to avoid when we're giving a presentation? When we're having a conversation? Being monotone. Having a flat voice that actually does nothing, because if there's no engagement, when there's no energy in our voice, your customers are going to feel that. Monotone, filler words, not customizing your presentation, reading your slides are all what I call distractions. Watch this video and tell me what it would be like if you were on the receiving end of someone who has a lot of distractions in their presentation.
So tell me about yourself.
Well, I'm an organized person, somebody who does not leave details out. I'm actually very, very good with groups. Group work. I've surpassed all my goals in my previous position, my prior job, and your competitor. My personality and me have surpassed their own goals.
Oh.
Get famous at mytalkingstain.com.
Those distractions are going to take away from the message that you have. What are the common distractions that we see when you go to meet with a customer? The filler words, negative words. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. How can we be more persuasive with our language? We're going to talk about our voice. Some of us, we talk really fast because they got a lot of information. They only gave me an hour, so I got to go through all this information. I'm going to go through the structure. I'm going to go through the body. I'm going to talk about the what, why, how. We're going to talk about how do we align our visual, vocal, verbal. We're going to talk about how do we answer questions. But if I talked like that for 60 minutes, what would happen? You wouldn't get anything. And so the speed that we deliver is important. The pace, the pause, all of that, incorporating that. Clarity is important, how we articulate our words and articulate our message. Then we've got to align that with our body language, our posture. Whether you're sitting around a table, and it's comfortable to sit around with your arms crossed, but that could send a negative message to your customer. The slouching in our chairs that we do from a posture standpoint when we're seated at a meeting. When we're on the phone, I know a lot of folks, you guys are on the phone at home. Phone conversations seated versus phone conversations standing up make all the difference from the customer's perception. Why is that? Because your voice can project. You can really get that tone and that feeling when you're standing in my office. I'm actually pacing with my headset on so that my customer feels the energy that I have. Now, I don't want to pace when I'm up in front of the classroom or when I'm up in front of a group, because that becomes what? That becomes the distraction or the stain from the previous video. So we want to be careful of our posture, our stance, our movement, our facial expressions, and we want to align all that. Now, how do we do all that? We need to take our words, our voice, and our body language, and we need to make sure they're saying the same thing. In 1960, Dr. Albert Morabian did a study about sending mixed messages to our audience. Now, I'm going to use the word audience to refer to a customer that's on the other end of the phone, the customer who's having a one-on-one conversation with you across maybe a table or around a conference room, or you're in a team meeting or you're standing up in front of 300 folks. When I say audience, it's all those situations. So put yourself in those situations and think about, how do I look? How do I sound? What is that customer getting from me? Because what Dr. Morabian found is that when we send a mixed message, like I did to you to open this session when I said, give me an okay symbol, but then I gave you the thumbs up, you didn't know what to do. I said, okay symbol. The words I chose, I said, give me an okay symbol. Words I chose, tone of my voice, even the articulation, the way that I emphasize, give me a okay symbol, but then the body language that I gave you contradicted it. Now, what are some other real examples? I showed you the example of me walking into my boss's office. What are other things that we do? So do you have any questions about our product? Now, what did I say? Do you have any questions about our product? But what did you pick up on when I said it? So what did I mean? Don't ask me anything. So you got any questions about anything that we've talked about so far today? As you cross your arms and step back and your customer's picking up that, oh, I'm not supposed to ask anything. Or you immediately turn to your notes. Do you have any questions about anything that we've covered so far today as you walk over to look at what you want to cover next, sending that message to that customer? I didn't really mean, do you have any questions? I'm not really trying to engage you. So how do we synchronize this? Now I want you to also think about over the phone, because we do so many conversations over the phone. Dr. Morabian's study said 84% of what the customer's perception is of our conversations comes from the tone of our voice. Would you want to listen to you on the other end of a phone conversation? We just said we don't want monotone, but do you ever hear people talk monotone? I get lots of cold calls to our office. They sound like robots. I don't care if you've got the perfect script. If your script isn't brought to life by your voice, and you don't make it real, you don't make it genuine, you don't make it authentic, then I don't want to connect with you. I don't want to talk. And our whole job is connecting. How do we take our products? You've got amazing products. How do we take those products and let the customer know what it is that we do and how it's going to help them and have them engage with us? Because if we just show up and throw up with the data, they're not going to want to listen. You wouldn't want to listen. And so we're going to drill down into, let's talk about all the specific things that we can do. Let's talk about a few words that we can use to be more persuasive with our customers. Let's talk about our voice and our body language. Let's bring some of those to life. Now, in your key takeaways workbook, there are some of these items documented for you. Now, if you want to take some extra notes, there's some things that we're going to cover now that aren't in the takeaways. For example, let's talk about persuasion. And what I did was I went and found some resources from Yale, from a book from Darlene Price called Well Said, from Robert Cialdini, Influence. How do we influence the people that we're trying to influence, our customers? Maybe in some cases, my kids. I want you to take some of this outside of work and think about how you'll use this with your kids, how you'll use this with your spouse. So the persuasive that we're going to talk about are words, phrases, questions, and I'm going to give you the most persuasive cause and effect word. So let's start with the most persuasive phrase. Now, it's really interesting. What they did was they hooked people up to heart rate monitors, blood pressure monitors, and they were saying, what words triggered the most reaction? What got somebody interested in your message? Now, we're going to avoid the negative and focus on the positive or the persuasive. What they found from a two-word phrase that we can all use with our customers on the phone and in person is this: thank you. Letting the customer know thank you for your business. Now, what I found interesting about the study was the differences between thank you and thanks. Thank you was higher. Why? You tell me. It's very personal. So think about when you converse with your customers that we're thanking them. Thank you for your business. So thank you is more persuasive than just saying thanks. Now, I'm not saying never use thanks. I'm just saying be very careful about where you word that. Maybe in an email, maybe in a conversation when I want to be very specific about thanking them. Thank you for your business. We appreciate you and we appreciate what you do for us. When we think about the most persuasive question, this is a question we can ask on every sales conversation. What do you think? What do you think the question is? The most persuasive sales question that we could ask, and we can ask it in all the questions. I use this with my wife and I always use this with my kids. What do you think? No, I actually just gave you the answer. What do you think is the most persuasive question that you can use? Now think about where you would use that. Right now, think about, yeah, I just presented some information and I'm trying to get some feedback. I'm trying to create that engagement. We just heard in the videos that we need to listen to our customers. Well, how do I listen to them? I listen to them by asking them those questions like, what do you think? And then zipping my mouth and focusing on them. Letting them talk. Ask those follow-up questions. What else? Tell me more. Is there anything else you want to share? Pulling from them to create that engagement. Now, I'm going to pick on Mike for just a second. Mike, can I pick on you for a sec? We're going to talk about the most persuasive word. This is a singular word, Mike, that we can use in conversations, Mike. When we are interacting with our customers, Mike, this is that one word that customers like to hear, Mike. Mike, what word do you think that is? It's Mike. If you can just use the word Mike the next time that you are interacting with your customer, they are going to be completely hooked on everything you say from that point forward. Obviously not. Use their name. Now, what I just did with Mike doesn't work. Don't overdo it. No offense to car sales folks, but it kind of felt a little car salesy. I would rather use what I call the Mike sandwich and start the conversation with Mike, have the conversation, and then end with, thank you, Mike, as I wrap up the conversation. So appropriately using their name. Then the cause and effect word. Now, I love the research. This goes back to the 1970s. And it's pretty amazing. When you want somebody to do something, and we do want to persuade our customers to either switch to us or continue using us, all they need is a reason. A cause and effect word is a reason. What's that reason? The study talked about the word because. You don't just say, are you interested? If you tell them why, because, and then you fill in the blank. Let me tell you, because other customers, because it's going to save you money, because it's environmentally friendly, because when you give the word because, it adds depth to your reason and has been found to be very persuasive. This is from Robert's book, Influence. So these are some of the persuasive words that we want to incorporate appropriately into our next conversations. Let's think about our voice. How we present our message. We just said monotone doesn't work. We want to be engaging. We want to bring that right amount of energy to our next sales conversation. So let's see if this works or doesn't work. Let's watch this clip and tell me what you think.
With the upgrade to the processing equipment and infrastructure, our users will now be able to connect to the systems they need from remote locations through our new VPN.
Does that work? He didn't seem interested. It might have been a great script, and we saw him reading the script, but he didn't bring the script to life. So what I asked him to do, his name's Terrell, I said, Terrell, do it again. He's in our studio. Terrell's an actor. He's actually a comedian. And he's acting, so that wasn't his real sense. And I said, let's do it again. Bring it to life. What's interesting about take two is he doesn't change the words. Now, I also want you to understand that when you learn different techniques that you want to go back and apply, you don't immediately hear something and immediately go apply it perfectly. It's a process. You'll try it. It'll probably be a little better, and then you'll make a few tweaks, and you'll try to make it even better. So here's Terrell's take two.
With the upgrades to our new processing equipment and infrastructure, our users will now be able to access the systems through remote locations using our new VPN.
So you tell me, what was different? What did Terrell do differently in take two? Was it monotone? Hand gestures were there, facial expressions were there, the chin was up. He did look at his notes once. It's perfectly fine to look at your notes. I don't want you to go in unprepared. You've got structure, you want flow, you want organization, so have notes. Just don't read them. I thought Cindy did a great job, Alexandra did a great job of bringing that last presentation to life. They weren't reading their decks. They weren't reading the information word for word off slides. They didn't have a script. They brought the information to life. We can do that with our message. I want you to think about this. What you bring to the stage is contagious. And I've got the word stage in quotes because what does stage mean? Stage could be a phone conversation. Stage could be the conference room. Stage could be this stage. What you bring is contagious. If your whole objective in communicating is just to get through it, is just I got to get this information out there, then your customer's going to pick up on that. Your customer's going to feel that, and they're not going to want to engage. What you bring is contagious. So if you bring boredom to the stage, they're bored. Over the phone, I don't want to listen. I don't want to continue this conversation. In person, I'm not interested in continuing. I just realized I got another meeting I'm supposed to be at. And so we're going to look for ways to get out. We're going to disengage. People want to know, why are people always on their phones? Why are people always disengaged in conversations? Because we're not doing anything to engage them, and it starts with us, our words, our voice, and our body language. And we're talking about voice, so let's continue to talk about voice. We've got vocals, we've got energy that we're bringing out, but we also have to be clear. When we don't clearly deliver the message, problems could happen, like the problem in this video.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
So we know clarity is important. We need to be able to articulate our words. One of the things, if you know me, and a handful of you know me, you've been in some of my workshops, you've seen me speak before, one thing that I do 100% of the time before every conversation or presentation is I practice tongue twisters. I was doing it in the back of the room, I was doing it out in the hallway, and one of my favorites is this phrase, Irish wristwatch. And so I'm in the hallway, and some of you actually saw me because I'm actually standing in the hallway with my arms out. I'll explain why in just a minute. I'm in the hallway with my arms out. I was trying not to do it in the front of everybody. And I'm in the hallway saying, Irish wristwatch, Irish wristwatch, Irish wristwatch, Irish wristwatch, Irish wristwatch, Irish wristwatch, Irish wristwatch. And I'm trying to work on my articulation. I'm trying to work on my clarity. Well, I'll explain the get big aspect of this. I want you to try it. At your table, let me give you 30 seconds. Turn to somebody at your table. I want every single member at every table to try saying Irish wristwatch 5 times. And we're gonna have a volunteer from every table come to the front of the room and actually practice that out in front of everybody. No, I'm kidding. The exercise was actually more for my entertainment than for your benefit. I really enjoy watching people struggle with that. Some of you got it out really easy. Others were like, that wasn't as easy as it looked. Why do I do tongue twisters before a conversation? First of all, it warms up my voice. I want to warm up my vocals. It's really frustrating on the phone or in person when you see people clearing their throat nonstop through a conversation. So warm your vocals up. Warm liquids, not cold, because you want to tighten those muscles. I want to loosen those muscles. So I want to warm up my voice. But let me tell you the 3 reasons I do it. Number 1 is it forces me to think about what I'm going to say. You had to focus on the words Irish wristwatch. You couldn't be thinking about anything else. You couldn't be on your phone trying to have a conversation saying these words. So it forced you to think. It probably forced you to slow down, because if you tried to do it too fast, that's when your tongue got twisted. And then the third benefit, and this is for both in person and over the phone, I'm hoping everybody at your tables were laughing. I was laughing at you. That you had this big smile because you knew it wasn't easy. And I want you to do think, slow, smile every time you're about to have a conversation. Every time you're about to pick up the phone. Every time you're about to walk into a room, I want you to think about what you're going to say. Slow down so that you're in control, and then bring the smile to the stage because that smile is contagious. That leads us into the body language aspect. So how do I align my body language with the voice and with the right words? Here's my first question for you. What do you think of this lady? This is your next speaker. She hadn't said a word yet. What are your thoughts? I heard somebody say cold. She might be, I don't know if you meant that from a actual physical, I'm cold, or whether she had that cold look. I've had this conversation with my daughter recently. She's a freshman in high school. She's 14, and we've had this conversation about what I call her resting face. And she plays volleyball, and the reason I tell you that is because she felt a little overwhelmed. She made the junior varsity as a freshman, and she just kind of felt a little overwhelmed. And I told her name's Kate, and I said, Kate, from the sidelines, I'm going to tell you, the look on your face, I know you deserve to be there, but the look on your face doesn't say I deserve it. The look on your face says, I don't know what I'm doing. You can play great, but the interpretation of your body language sends a different signal to your coaches, to your teammates, to the fans. So we got to be careful. Think about your face. Now, when I say think, slow, smile, what you bring to the stage is contagious. I want you to be thinking about that first impression, those first words on the telephone call, those first words, the first impression body language-wise when I walk into a meeting. What is that customer seeing? Cindy just talked about the smile is our name badge. You bring that to your customer's conversation. Do your competitors do that every time? Are they consistent at it? Probably not. You can be memorable because of your body language. Now, if you had to get specific about this lady, what didn't work? What brought that negative perception of her? So people said arms crossed. What else? Just the overall face. So I talked about the resting face, thinking about what your facial expression is and thinking about my body gestures. Now, I'm not going to say crossing your arms is always negative. It doesn't have to be. We always think, oh, never cross your arms. That's not true because this lady has her arms crossed. Do you have the same perception of her? What's different? Okay, she's got a smile on her. Her facial expression is very drastically different, yet her arms are crossed. The arms aren't sending a negative message because the face is sending such a positive message. In her example, what does the arms crossed actually come across as? I heard somebody say confidence. So in that case, it's actually working for her. I want you to think when you do something with your body language, you do it what I call purposefully. You have purposeful hand gestures, purposeful facial expressions, purposeful movements if you're moving on a stage. Everything needs to be with purpose. Now, what else is different about that second lady? I like it. You picked it up. Somebody said her shoulders are back. Think about how that makes such a difference from the perception. One of the ways I coach people when you're sitting around at a conference table, and I'm not talking about right now, right here, is get your back off the chair. You're having a conversation with your customer and you're seated in their office, get your back off the chair. What does that do? It leans you in. That slight lean in lets that customer know, I'm interested in you. We have to think about our body language. Now, why was I doing Irish wristwatch with my arms really big? Comes from a TED Talk. First, quick show of hands, how many people have watched Amy Cuddy on TED? I see not even a dozen hands go up. All right, you need to go watch Amy Cuddy. Amy Cuddy's research talks about how we send the signals to our brain that lets us know that we've got this. I've got the next conversation, whether it's over the phone or in person or a big presentation. I've got this. I was actually standing in the back of the room before I came up here like this for 2 minutes. Why? Amy's research says 2 full minutes with an open body posture, not arms crossed, waiting for your turn to talk. When we're seated, legs crossed, kind of crunched over and hunched, we're sending negative signals to our brain. She actually says it changes the chemistry of our brain, the serotonin, the endorphins, the epinephrine, all of that, all the positivity that we want to share with our customer by getting big before we walk into the meeting, before I get on that phone call. That's what we want to bring to the stage. So again, your job is to align your words with your voice and with your body language. And I can just now imagine all the next speakers coming up are all going to be standing up here going, Irish wristwatch, with a big smile on their face. Now, the key to making all of what we've just talked about work is the word authentic. You need to be you. I have literally had the question, Kevin, do I do teeth or no teeth when I'm smiling? And I said, I don't know, what's your smile look like? I'm not going to coach you on how to smile. Bring your smile. Be authentic when you deliver your next conversation. So we've got all of that down. Now we got to get to the message. We've got to deliver. The great thing about this week, you're going to learn so much about Torque. You're going to learn about the new products. You're going to learn about the new technologies. But you can't show up and throw up on your customers and say, let me tell you about everything I just learned in the conference. I want you to interpret this quote from George Bernard Shaw. He wrote this about 100 years ago. And it still applies. It applies, and I want you to think about your sales conversations. How does this apply to our sales conversations? What does it mean? Anybody want to take a shot? He did not, he said too much because why? He just wrote and wrote and wrote because it was easier than spending the time to boil down the message onto a postcard. Now think about our sales presentation. I got all this information that we've just learned. How do I boil it down to the point that I want to drive home with my customer? Now, let me give you an analogy. You know this guy, right? Who's this guy? Now, I found it very interesting. Depending on where you're coming in from, you might have said Waldo, but you also might have said Wally. I learned in the UK his name's Wally. So it's a different name. Now, what's the point of the game to play? Find him. So the screen looks like this. My kids used to love this. Your job was to go find Waldo or Wally in what I'm going to now refer to as the show up and throw up. What are all you doing right now? Yeah, y'all are looking for Wally or Waldo, right? You're looking for him. Now, here's what happens to your customer. You've got all this information, and your customer is trying to sift through to find out, well, what's the point? How are you guys any different? How is this going to benefit me? And maybe I do like what I'm hearing. Maybe I do see the benefits, but how? How am I going to use this? What's the next step? So they're lost in the show up and throw up. Now, I'm going to stop you guys. You guys are keep looking. So here he is. But again, what's the point? To find him. Give your customers Waldo. Take the time before you walk in. You guys said it earlier. One of the attributes we don't want is not tailoring your message to your customer. Understand your customer's needs. What do they need? Why do they choose you? Now, I don't know anything about what you guys do when you walk into a sales conversation, but I can tell you this. I bet it has to do with price. I'll bet it has to do with delivery. I'll bet it has to do with quality. I'll bet it has to do with, are you guys an environmentally friendly organization to work with? And others. Why? Because these are all very standard things that we should be able to think about. Now, which one's most important to our customers? Price, quality, distribution? Which one's most important? It depends. Thank you. I think I heard it over here. You can't assume it's always price. Now, is price always something that your customers are interested in? Yes. Are you the cheapest price? No. So what do you have to sell? I heard value, right? That's what we're selling, value. If you know that that is the number one consideration from your customer, then we need to sell value. But what if your customer's not about that? It's not about the price. We get the price. We know you guys are the premium product. Now I'm more interested in, can you deliver it when I need it? Maybe that needs to be the Waldo you deliver. Maybe, I know you guys can deliver. I'm comfortable with your price. How environmentally friendly are you all? Because we want to be able to position that to our customers, and the partners that we have, the vendors that we use, need to be in line with that. And so maybe that's the Waldo for that customer. So I want you to be thinking about what that point is and be able to drive that point home. My favorite way to approach this is what I call the 3-bucket strategy. Don't overwhelm your customers with so much. Keep it simple. Boil it down to 3 points. Now, this is not a magic number. I didn't pull 3 out of the hat and say, here, just it needs to be 3. There's actually some background, some research to this. I want you to think about a TV show. I want you to think about a movie, or I want you to think about a childhood story that you remember reading or hearing that involves 3 things. Yell a few out. Or 3 little pigs, 3's Company, 3 blind mice, Goldilocks and the 3 bears, My 3 sons, 3 musketeers, 3 billy goats. Now, 3 stooges. It's not a coincidence that these all happen to be 3s. Watch this video and you'll get to hear a little bit more about why we need to take our message and boil it down to make it simple and digestible for our customers.
Schools across the entire country are telling kids today, in case of an emergency, dial 911. If there's a fire, stop, drop, and roll. And they're even sharing stories about 3 little pigs and 3 blind mice. Notice a commonality? All are memorable, and all are built around the number 3. Consider the Latin phrase omne trium perfectum. It means everything that comes in 3s is perfect, or every set of 3 is complete. This trend, well, it actually still exists in our adulthood. Consider this. The TSA tells you to do 3 things: show your ID, take out your liquids, and remove your shoes. In 2011, Steve Jobs described the new iPad as thinner, lighter, and faster. Again, the number 3. The rule of 3 is really all around us because it works. Because here's the ultimate thing. The human brain works like this. 1, 2, 3, I forget. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is ever going to remember your 4th or your 5th or even your 10th point. So the next time you work on your presentation, aim for this. You guessed it, the number 3.
Keep it simple. How do we keep it simple? Well, we got to boil it down. We have to spend that extra time. Now, I did hear this. I wasn't ignoring it. Somebody said Snow White when I asked about the stories. Somebody said Snow White and the 7 dwarfs. Now, there's an exception to the rule of 3, but here's how it applies. I want you, and you don't have to yell this out. I'm not going to quiz you or bring you up to the front. Can you name all 7 dwarfs? You know there's 7. I knew that my SCA rep, when they came in, there were 7 points. Can you name the 7 dwarfs? And if you just think about it, how many could you name? Some of you are like, I can't remember any of them. Some of you are like, so sometimes we do too much, and we've watered down our whole point, and I can't remember any of it. Some of you are still trying to go through what they are. But if you're struggling, guess what? Your customers are so busy. I'm not going to take the time to say, all right, they had 7 points, and I know they were talking about being environmentally friendly. I know they were talking about the value, and what else was it? There were 5 other things. They're not going to spend the time. What they're going to do, they're going to sit there and check out and go on to something else. So we've got to keep it simple. I want to give you a couple of structures, some things that you can do. Keep it simple, 3 buckets. You can also use this. I call it the what, the why, and the how. And I want you to think about how you would position your products. This is my presentation. I've got an opening and I've got a close. But the body of my message, the structure, the flow, is about what? Here's the product. Here's why we're different. And here's how you work with us. Too many times during sales conversations, we leave out the how. I get you guys. I get why. But how? How do I start the process? How do I try you? What's the next step? We haven't given the action items to our audience. And when we presented the information without action, our audience is paralyzed. Whether that's here at this conference or whether it's a one-on-one conversation at their store or in their office. So how do we keep it simple? What, why, how's, and I structure. Another structure that I use, and these aren't in your handout, so I'll just give you some of the ones that I use. One that I use is called the good, the bad, and the new. Good, bad, new. Now, why do I share that? Because when I give feedback to somebody, I want to keep it simple. Here's what I liked. Here was the good of your presentation. Here's what wasn't so good, the bad, and here's something new or different that you could bring to your next presentation. You might be able to bring some of that to a project meeting, to a sales meeting, where not probably to your customer, but internally you talk about, here's the good of my last conversation. Here's what didn't go so well, and here's what I need to do different. When we give each other that feedback, we're going to continue to get better. So how do we keep our message simple? You've got to spend that time to boil it down. And so let's talk about boiling our message down. This is a lot of information going on right here. If I want to take something, now there's multiple points happening on this slide. The worst thing would be for me to turn and read it. But I want to pick one thing. I bolded it. We're going to talk a little bit about recycling. I came across an article last month about the recycling that you do. And I said, hey, I'm going to be at the sales conference. Let me think about how we could take this message, which is a show up and throw up, and no customer wants to hear you read this. Pick a point off that slide, and how do we bring that to life? So let me give you an example. I've got about 3-4 slides where I want to walk you through an example. Now you have to take what I'm about to show you and make it you. And I'm going to share it exactly how it happened to me. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm scrolling through the articles, and I came across 3 or 4 folks that I'm connected with at SCA who shared an article about recycling. And so I said to myself, this is how we could bring it to life to our customers. And so just a quick show of hands, last month when it was $1.5 billion, how many people bought a lottery ticket? Quite a few folks. I got to be careful how I say this, but I always say the lottery is a tax on people who aren't very good at math. So no offense. So you might have bought a ticket. There are only 3 winners, and so there were a whole lot of wasted tickets. So what did you do with your ticket? Well, I threw it away. Well, did you throw it in the trash or did you throw it in the recycle bin? Because if you threw it in the recycle bin, there's a pretty good chance that it ended up in Alabama. And there's a pretty good chance it ended up at the SCA location where it got recycled. So your lottery ticket could actually turn into a napkin. And to be very specific, 1 pound of lottery tickets is 89 Torque napkins. How do we take a topic like being environmentally friendly, recycling, and not do the show up and throw up with our customer, but bring it to life? Tell a story. Don't just share the data. Don't just share the handouts. Connect. Bring it to life. Find something that resonates with you, and then that passion will resonate with your customer. So far we've talked about communication. We've talked about structuring our message, keeping it simple, bringing it to life. But now let's talk about questions. You will get questions from your customers. They have simple questions. And I want you to be thinking right now at your table, what are some of the most common questions that I get on every single sales or marketing conversation when I'm interacting with a customer? Every conversation, it always comes up X, Y, or Z. They always bring that up. Now, when you think about that, I want you to be prepared to be able to answer those questions. I just said, think about what those top 3 questions would be, the simple, standard, everyday questions you get, and you cannot be unprepared for those. What happens when you come across like this with your customer and you're not prepared to answer a question?
Okay. Recent polls have shown 1/5 of Americans can't locate the U.S. on a world map. Why do you think this is?
I personally believe that U.S. Americans are unable to do so because some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education, like such as in South Africa and the Iraq, everywhere like such as, and I believe that they should, our education over here in the U.S. should help the U.S. or should help South Africa and should help the Iraq and the Asian countries, so we will be able to build up our future for our children.
Thank you very much, South Carolina.
So you deliver the most awesome presentation to your customer, and you get to the Q&A section and you bomb. And guess what your customer remembers? The fact that you bombed. You need to be organized. You need to be prepared. So what I tell people to do, take all the questions that you know are going to come, and we're going to prepare. You got to plan ahead for those questions. This is an everyday exercise. This is not a in the moment, I'm going to think about it. Every day you practice this. I read this great quote, and we just saw the Super Bowl on Sunday, and it was an NFL commercial. It said, amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. I want you to think about every question that you get. I want you to write them all down. I want you to put them on index cards. All those questions that you get, share these with your teammates. Share these with the different regions. Share these around the globe so that everybody is thinking about the same set of questions and everybody's thinking about the same set of answers. Now, I don't want you to be scripted. I don't want it to come out like a robot. Your customer doesn't want that. You don't want that. You've got to be able to make it yours. Now, what I will then tell you to do, once you've written all these down, I want you to pull out the camera that everybody has in their pocket these days. On your own, in your office, in the car, not driving. And I want you to video yourself answering those questions. What does it look like? What does it sound like? Do I come across credible, or do I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about? So that the message that we have when we deliver a well-flowing, well-structured message about our products now is in sync with the fact that you can ask me anything and I'm prepared. Make sense? What I want you to do then is I want you to think about the tough questions. Now, somebody give me the toughest, give me 2 or 3 tough questions that you get. You know, ones that you're like, I hate when they ask me that, or it comes across a little aggressive, the customer's a little aggressive. What are some of those examples? Give me a question or 2 like that. Yes. Couldn't hear what he said. You guys know these, so give me one more. You guys know what they are. Everybody agree that hurt him? Give me another one. Tough ones where you're like, oh, I hate when they ask me that. Pricing issues. Give me the question. Kind of put it in almost an aggressive tone a little bit. Got it. That's a good one, right, Mike? We don't want that. Competition's doing it. How come you guys can't? So here's what I want you to think about as we talk about the aggressive questions is I want to ask you, do you respond to these types of questions? All these aggressive type questions like a carrot, like an egg, or like a coffee bean? No, what does that mean? You're in hot water. You're in a heated situation with your customer. You just got this great presentation, and all of a sudden they're kind of hitting you with these tough questions. Do you have this tendency like a carrot in hot water? What does a carrot do when it's in hot water, boiling water? It softens. So, Mike, what's going to happen when they say, hey, can you give me that free dispenser? Sure. You soften and you give in every time. What about the egg? What does the egg do? No way, can't do it. We've done it in the past, we ain't going to do it again. I don't want you to get the egg is hard-boiled, almost gets to a point where we almost have an aggressive tone. We get very defensive about the question that they ask. And so do you react like that? What about ground coffee beans in hot water? What happens to the water? It turns into the most delicious beverage on the planet, right? It's a win-win. So think about the 3 situations. Do you give in the carrot? Do you get very defensive, the egg, Or do you try to find a win-win with that customer? Try to make the situation better? How do you approach this? And I'm going to give you a process for this. And again, these are in your key takeaways. Different than a regular question. Now, you don't have to do this with every question. You do this with those aggressive questions. You have got to show the customer empathy. They need to know that you've heard them. You cannot jump into a response. You've got to let them know, I acknowledge your question and why you're asking it. Then we transition to the response. And sometimes I don't have a response. Sometimes they ask me a tough question that I don't have an answer to, and I either need to go find it, I need to ask them additional questions to really uncover where we're going, and then there's times I just know the answer. So let me walk you through this really quick. Number one, when I'm acknowledging, I need to let them know I heard them. There's lots of phrases. What I would tell you is stay away from the most generic phrases. Don't sound like a robot. Yes, ma'am, I understand where you're coming from because we are one of the most expensive products out in the workplace. But let me tell you how we are better. Nobody wants to hear that. Empathy is pick a phrase, pick something that is in your words that fits the situation with that customer. Now, my son, 17, just gave me this line the other day, and maybe you want to use it. Maybe you want to apply it with your next customer. He said, Dad, I'm picking up what you're laying down. I wouldn't use that with your customer. But it applied to a 17-year-old, and I had to stop for a second when he said that, and I was like, is he, oh, that makes sense. He's actually said he's listening. Let your customer know you're listening. Now, the word because, I hear you, I understand where you're coming from, because when you offer that great, persuasive, cause and effect word, you are now giving the depth to your understanding. I understand, let me tell you why we're so expensive. Let me tell you about the value that you get. I understand because, fill in the blank. I've heard other customers. Here's how we've helped other customers who've done. Give me the because, the depth that goes a little bit deeper. Now, when you transition, and you may not hear this at a lot of conferences, but you're going to hear this from me, I'm going to tell you, when you're transitioning, you need to scratch your butt. I told you wouldn't hear that at a lot of conferences. You need to scratch your butt. Now, what does that mean? See, I don't know what y'all were thinking. When you transition to your response, don't use the word but. I understand because, and then you're either going to pause or use the word and. You're not going to use the word but. What does the word but do? If I talk to my customer, I understand that we're a little bit more expensive, but, and then you give a response. What does the but do in that example? It negates what I just said. So you really don't understand me. You really aren't engaging with me. You're trying to get to your point. This is hard. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to hear this in conversations. You're going to hear it in your own conversations, at home, at work, on the phone, where all of a sudden you're like, I do that all the time. I need to eliminate this word from my vocabulary, get better at pausing, and then giving that response. So we know we need to acknowledge them, give the depth of the because, pause when I transition, and then when I'm ready to give my response, I can either give the response that I prepared for or ask additional questions if I need to understand more. And there's lots of ways that we can do that to really get that understanding from our customers. So here's what I want you to do. A challenge for you on this is to practice this. Write a few of these down during this week. What are some of those objections you get? What are some of those tough questions? And rehearse it, practice it. Pull that phone out, record yourself and say, how does that look? What does that sound like? What would I buy from me? Why is this customer not calling me back? Well, go watch the video. It's probably very telling in terms of why you're not getting those return phone calls. You want to increase your business? Take the great products, take the great messaging, and now align that with a great delivery. So the things that we talked about visual, our vocal, and our verbal. And what do we need to do? Align that, whether it's in person or over the phone. We talked about getting to the point. What's the point that I'm trying to get across? And how do I make that stick with my customer so that I'm memorable the next time I call on them? I'm not, who are you again? The next time I'm calling on that customer. How do I have good structure and good flow to my presentation? The last thing we talked about was scratching our butts and having a good response to those questions that we get from our customers. So very quickly, I want to hear from you all, just two, 3, 4, 5 times here. Let me hear something that you've heard in the last 60 minutes that you're going to be able to take back and apply to your next conversation. It's okay to scratch your butt. Keep it simple. I heard somebody say 3 buckets. 3. Think, slow, smile. Heard 2 folks here. Say their name appropriately. What else? Body language. Be thinking about my body language. I maybe wasn't aware of what I've done. I see the guys in the back table doing the get big back there. They don't even know we're looking at them right now. The get big, so we're going to send all those positive signals to our head the next time we're having that phone conversation, the next time we're going to have that meeting. One more. Give me one last one. Well, I heard 2, so we're going to go Irish wristwatch. We're going to really work on our clarity and our articulation. I heard somebody say good, bad, new is a great way at our sales meetings internally to talk about what's working, what's not working, and what we could do different. Now, about 15 years ago, my wife got me a 1-hour gift certificate for a golf lesson. I live in Austin, Texas. I got to go to a place called Golfsmith and take a lesson with a golf pro for an entire hour. Now, he told me everything about playing golf. He told me exactly how to stand, showed me where to line up with the ball, told me how to grip the club, told me what to do with my elbows when I was lining up with the ball, what my elbows needed to be doing on the backswing, what my hips were supposed to be doing, and where they were supposed to be lined up, where I was supposed to be when I contacted the ball, and how I followed through. I mean, just walked me through all of it. And obviously my wife had done this because I was a bad golfer, and all my friends were always just killing me on the course. And so I said, babe, I really need to get better. I'm losing so much money. And so she said, here, go get some lessons. And I'm seriously, I got done with this lesson, and I was so excited because I now knew how to golf better. And during the lesson, he said, you're going to get a free bucket of balls. Afterward, you get to go hit. And I said, so awesome. So I took the bucket of balls, and I started to go practice right afterwards. And I immediately realized that I had become a worse golfer. Why? I had so much stuff going on in my head. I didn't even know what to think about. I got over there going, wait, which way? Oh my gosh, where's my feet supposed to be? My hands, did he say elbows in or out on the? And I got so in my own head for the next 12 years, I didn't play anymore. I just was done. I didn't play any more golf. Because I was thinking about too much. And this happens to us. And I don't want you to leave here thinking that, oh, we've got all this stuff. What do I do? Well, President Calvin Coolidge said, we cannot do everything, but we can do something. And I want you to be thinking about that something. What's that one thing that you could be working on? What's one thing that you could take away from? Don't all of it. Don't sit there and go, all right, now I got to be thinking about my pace, and I got to think about my pauses, and I need to. If you do that, your next sales conversation is going to be horrible. Pick something that you want to work on. Now, I'm going to fast forward. I said 12 years. I didn't play for 12 years until my son was 15 and decided to pick up the clubs and play. And he's kind of a natural athlete, and so he's better than me almost immediately. And so then he started taking lessons, and I was tagging along during one of the lessons, and he's over here working with the instructor, and I said, you know what, I'm going to just hit a few and see how bad my swing really is. Maybe it's not as bad as I remembered. And as I'm over here warming up, all of a sudden I go, whew, whew. I mean, the balls are just going in every different direction, while my son is over there getting his lesson. His name's Kip. The instructor walks over to me in the middle of their lesson, and he says, sir, if you'll keep your left elbow straight, you'll notice that your ball's going to stay a lot straighter. And then he walked back over to help my son. So what do you think I did from that moment forward? Right? I only thought about my left elbow. That's all I thought about. Everything else that I'm doing wrong, I still do 1,000 other things wrong. At least my left elbow was going to stay straight. And as I hit the ball the next few times, guess what happened? It was going straight. Now, it did that rug thing across the carpet, or whatever that's called, but at least it was staying in that direction enough to where my son and I could actually play some golf together. Now, he still killed me, but we had some fun. And I was able to go out there, instead of spending all my time in the woods trying to find my ball, we actually got to be on the course together. And so as we close today, as we wrap up this session, I want you to think about the one thing. What's the one thing that you could focus on that's going to improve your communication the next time you're on the phone, the next time you're having that one-on-one conversation, the next time you're at a team meeting, or when you have that opportunity to stand on this stage and deliver your message? What's that one thing you're going to do? Thank you guys for your time this morning. Thank you.